There were some limitations in this research study. The first limitation was the time of the research study. This research study was done in 6 weeks. Because of that, there were a limited number of data points and only certain conclusions could be drawn based on the data points collected. The timing of the research study was another limitation. This research study began in January, so second grade students had already had some exposure to the second grade sight words, so it's hard to really truly see how much they grew because of this research study. The research design was another limitation. One of my colleagues taught the control group and I taught the experimental group. This made it difficult for me to ensure that students were receiving the same delivery of instruction. Finally, there was a fairly small sample size in this research study. 42 second graders participated in the research study, but because there were only 42 students, it was hard to compare different groups of students and hard to draw conclusions. With a larger group size, more conclusions could have been drawn. Some suggestions for future research include a longer research study. Obviously, with more than 6 weeks, more data points can be collected and more conclusions could be drawn to support the hypothesis of the research study. The timing of the research study would ideally begin in August. Then the pretest could be given before any exposure to second grade sight words, and you could get a true picture of how much students actually grew. You could also, this would provide you with more time for the research and more exposure to those more challenging sight words. I suggest that the research design be changed and that only one instructor teach both the control and the experimental group to ensure that the delivery of instruction is as similar as it can possibly be. And then finally, I suggest that a larger sample size be used for future research. A whole grade level could be used or potentially different classes from different grade levels. Then there could be some comparisons of proficient versus non-proficient, or how it affects boys versus how it affects girls, or how it affects second graders compared to first graders or even third graders. There were some implications in this research study for students. All students learned how to orthographically map words, which supports them in being able to read and spell unknown words. The experimental group also had some implications. They learned to identify phonemic patterns within words, and they began to apply those skills to reading and spelling of unknown words. Some implications for educators is that orthographic mapping supports reading and spelling of second grade words. And focusing on second grade sight words ensures that core curriculum is being taught to all second grade students. Some implications for parents is that they can make some connections between what is going on at home and what's going on at school. So through communication with the teacher, the parents could learn how to finger stretch words or to sound out words and then to orthographically map those words. They can also learn about phonemic patterns and how to identify those when their child gets stuck on a word at home. It's making that connection between school and home and how to best support their child. In conclusion, my research study did not show a statistically significant impact on students' ability to read and spell sight words based on phonemic patterns. I think by making some changes to the research study, more accurate conclusions could be drawn to support the hypothesis. I did conclude that word mapping supports reading and spelling of second grade words for students in both the control and experimental group. These are the references that I used in today's presentation. I truly appreciate your attention and also your time for listening to my presentation. Thanks. Have a great night.